All right, so hey, lemlisters, I'm super happy to be joined today with Matt Heinz, CEO of Heinz Marketing, who has helped Fortune 500 companies thrive in the last 15 years. Matt, thanks a lot for accepting my invite.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You see, I've got a lot of energy here because it's like end of the day in Paris. I know it's early for you in on the West Coast.
It's not too bad. It's only 9 a.m. here, but I got a full cup of coffee, so I'm ready to go.
That's nice. That's nice. So everyone, just before I actually start chatting with Matt about like some passionate thing, like alignment between sales and marketing, funnel, we're going to give you like tons of tips. I just wanted to make sure that you can hear us well. And so please, whenever you can hear us, just put a like or a comment. You can also let us know in the comment where you're from, just so we can see like how spread the time zone is. I know like lots of folk from the US, a lot of folk from Europe, maybe a few from Australia. So please let us know in the comments. So also guys, yeah, make sure to ask your question during the live. Vuk from my team is basically like taking the best question and sending them straight to me. So in order to make the live even more interactive, you can ask all your questions to Matt, and I'll be the one like asking them. So let's jump straight and right into it. Sales and marketing.
Yeah.
There's been plenty of talk about, how they can work together. And actually, like, I'm really interested to see with you, what are the typical mistakes you see that make, like the collaboration inefficient, and how not to fall into the trap of misalignment between sales and marketing?
Well, I think, the two things that teams need to understand and agree on first is, one, what are the targets? And two, who are the targets?
Okay.
What are the targets means like, what numbers are we working towards? So there's a sales goal that comes out of a pipeline goal that comes out of a demand volume, right? And so at minimum, to understand how much demand is required to hit a certain pipeline number, how much pipeline do you need in a certain selling period to close a certain number of deals and hit your sales number. If you don't agree on that, then everything else is going to be disorganized and inconsistent. And it's amazing to me how many marketers don't know what the sales goal is. Yeah. Don't know how many leads they need to generate, don't know how much qualified demand is required for the sales team to hit their pipeline number, let alone their sales number. So understanding demand to opportunity to close in a given selling period, first of all, is critically important. We actually have a really simple template that if anyone wants them, they can email me, or we can put it up here or something that just helps people sort of define, sort of come up with those numbers pretty quickly. Nice. Second is, who is the target? And if you don't agree on the right customers to sell to, you also have sort of just inconsistency in tension, right? Like not just who are the companies we should be selling to and why? What are the attributes and characteristics of those companies that have a need, and why should we be talking to them? And two is, who are the people within those companies that are actually going to help make decisions? Like, what does the buying committee look like? Who are the members of the decision-making and influencing group inside that have a vested interest in solving the problem? What do they have in common? How are they different? How do they buy? How do they think about the problem? The better you can understand those two fundamental questions, like what are our targets and who are our targets, that is foundational to building a more cohesive, a more organized, and a more predictable sales pipeline development program moving forward.
Nice. Yeah, I do agree with you. And on that topic, actually, I have like a question, because you say, okay, it's great, you need to know your targets. So your goals when it comes to objective for sales, and also, your target and who's your ideal customer profile. However, like if you look at how companies usually like give incentive, to marketeers or to the marketing team and to salespeople, it's usually different. So for example, you're going to have people giving bonus to the marketing team based on the number of qualified leads. And then, they would get, like, for sales, it would be based on the number of deal that is closed. So do you think that the fact that, it's not really aligned when it comes to bonus tends sometimes, to mix things up between marketing and sales? How would you do it? Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I think if you tell the marketing team that your goal is not traffic, that your goal is not impressions, that your goal is pipeline, if they don't hit that number, then they get fired, right? I mean, like if you're underperforming in any role, then, then you're not performing. And so I think some of this is aligning the organizations with the right goals. Lead volume in and of itself is not valuable. In fact, lead maybe be counterproductive if you're generating the wrong leads that aren't helping you hit your number and are wasting the sales team's time when they could be maybe better off for them to just to cold call the right prospects to see who has, right? So I don't think alignment of compensation is as big a deal as people think it is. I think it's organizational alignment around the right targets. And then making sure that marketing strategies and efforts and tactics and sort of daily and weekly decisions and pivots are focused on the right outcomes. That's much more important. Like if you're in an organization where you have to change the bonus structure for marketing to get them to do the right thing, or if you have to put some kind of service level agreement in place to get marketing to generate the right leads and sales to do the follow-up, if you have to put a contract in place to drive consistent execution, you've got deeper cultural corporate issues that need to be addressed.
Understand. That's interesting. And have you ever faced when you were working for some companies, like doing consulting, sometimes, I don't know, like a misalignment between sales and marketing, and how did you manage to kind of fix it?
Yeah, it's pretty common at companies of all sizes, all ages, all industries. And I think, marketers increasingly are becoming more revenue responsible across the board. That means different things to different people in different companies. But I think oftentimes the sales team still feels like ultimately they're on their own. Ultimately, no matter what marketing says, they're responsible for bringing in deals, and they can't just wait for the right leads. And you know what? They're right. But I think that I want to see more marketers put their money where their mouth is when it comes to being revenue responsible. It's one thing to say we all agree on the revenue targets at the beginning of the year or quarter when you're kicking things off. It's another thing to know what that means on Tuesday. Like, what's happening Tuesday morning? A lead got generated. Who's following up? With what message? With what frequency? With what offer? Who's doing that? Is it marketing following up, or is it sales following up? How do we know that lead that came in was the right lead? And if it's not the right lead, what happens to them? If it is the right lead, so I think there's a level of operational alignment that is required. And I would encourage companies to document it so that it's applied consistently. Like, don't worry about some big published bound sales playbook. The best sales playbooks are a series of checklists, essentially, that just encourage companies to execute in a consistent manner until they find a better way of doing it.
Yeah, agree with that. Actually, we have a question from the audience. So someone is asking, what are key KPIs marketing needs to know and is accountable for? And same for sales. Like, what would be the key KPIs, even though it can differ from organization to another, but...
Well, my favorite metrics are those that you can buy a beer, a glass of wine with, right? And so, let's start at the bottom of the funnel, close deals, right? Actually getting revenue. And so if we're focused for now purely on sort of net new business, closing new deals is the metric, right? So for sales, like, did you get your prospect to buy? If you're marketing, did you influence that? Did that come from your lead? Or did you provide some content or tool that influenced getting that deal across the line? You start to work your way up the pipeline and things become a little less important, right? I don't care about leads if we're hitting our pipeline number. I care about pipeline only in that it means I can better forecast with accuracy my ability to hit my sales number. I don't care about traffic. I don't care about retweets unless that ultimately is leading towards pipeline as well, right? So
sorry to interrupt, Matt, but for you, just to clarify maybe for the audience, what do you mean exactly by pipeline? Do you mean like marketing qualified leads, sell qualified leads, or?
Yeah, no, sorry, good question. When I say pipeline, I think short-term sales opportunities.
Okay.
Right. So I'm thinking a prospect where there's been some. It's not just someone you want to sell to, right?
Okay.
It's someone that you're in an active conversation with that has an immediate need. You're talking to a decision maker. There's budget and a timeline that's been discussed. I mean, kind of typical sort of sales opportunity qualification criteria. For me, that's pipeline. When I think about it for my own business, I think about, okay, who are the companies, not just that I want to sell to, not just those that I've talked to, but where there's a specific need where we've started to discuss how we can help them with support that need, but they haven't bought yet. To me, that's pipeline, right?
Okay.
And that pipeline can come from a lot of different places. It can come from a salesperson cold calling. It can come from an inbound referral. It can come from someone responding to an advertisement or attending a trade show or, getting an email and clicking on that and engaging. So to me, where the pipeline comes from is less important than how are you consistently and predictably generating the right amount of pipeline on a regular basis for the sales team. To me, that is marketing's, that is one of marketing's mandates. And to be able to measure a consistent level of lead production as well as pipeline influence, those are good opportunities for marketing to demonstrate their revenue impact.
And I think it's super interesting, and I feel like that's always tricky. Like, how exactly would you say that marketing can? Because where I've seen sometimes misalignment is, when you start scaling, marketing needs to fill the pipeline with more and more opportunities, and sometimes your sales team is scaling, and then you would have like marketing saying like they're not closing deal because they are like very poor at sales. And sales would say like they're just giving us like poor leads. So how would you like differentiate, like what metrics would you use to evaluate the quality of the marketing lead versus like the deal closed when things are kind of shifting away?
Well, I think this is where there has to be a level of agreement up front on what is a quality lead and what happens when we find one.
Okay.
Right. And so I think having contractual service level agreements sort of implies that you don't trust each other. But if you can sit down in a room and say, like, what is a good lead? Like, marketing's job is not to generate volume. Marketing's job is to generate quality. And so if I can generate 100 good leads, that may be more valuable than generating 1,000 new email addresses, or 1,000 website hits. If the 100 good leads, in many cases, the lower the volume coming from marketing, sometimes the better if they're focused on the right prospect. So let's all agree, sales and marketing, what type of company and what individual within that company is a worthy lead based on whatever definition you come up with. There's a lot of different variables you include in that. But whatever you define, when that comes in, when that shows up, when someone responds, when that person is at our booth, now what are we going to do? So now sales has also agreed, hey, this is a good lead. This is someone we want to sell to. Here's how we're going to follow up. Here's what we're going to offer them. Here's who's going to follow up. Here's how quickly they're going to follow up. And again, this is sitting down and saying together as a revenue unit, like sales and marketing have different roles, but at each stage of the modern sales pipeline, sales and marketing are doing different things together. So when that lead comes in, what's the content? What's the process? What's the offer that sales may offer, but that marketing may provide, that marketing may direct? And so, this is where we talk to companies about driving demand. It's not just about putting ads on, and sort of getting more SEO traffic. Like, you have to have some of these systems and checklists and processes in place so that you can more efficiently, more consistently, and more predictably convert those leads and that demand into pipeline and close deals.
Could you walk us through, for example, an example, of a pipeline where, let's say, like marketing has generated like a qualified lead, and then what's next? What type of action, for example, salespeople should do as a checklist to go through and make sure to close the deal, or mark it as lost?
Yeah. So let's say someone downloads your white paper, right?
Yeah.
And let's say it's someone interesting from a company you're trying to do business with. They haven't said they want to buy. They haven't said they're interested in your product. They just wanted a white paper, right? So from their perspective, the transaction is over. They're not expecting. So, someone calling, hey, did you get the white paper? It's like, it's a waste of time. What I don't want sales to do, which many of them sales teams will do if you don't give them sort of, advice and direction, is like, hey, thanks for downloading the white paper. Would you like to see a demo? Like, no one says yes to that either. So what I would rather do is I'd rather have an agreement that when the right person at the right company downloads the white paper, sales calls with some kind of an approach like this. They say, why? what about that white paper made it interesting right now? What's going on in your business that made the topic of that white paper prescient right now? What are you working on? What are you thinking about? What are you preparing for that made that topic important? And then, you know, depending on how they answer, you can say like, listen, like, you know, when I talk to people in your role about this situation, and I ask them, what are the challenges you're facing? What are the things keeping you up at night around that? I tend to hear the same 2 or 3 things. So don't ask your prospects what keeps them up at night. Tell them what should be keeping them up at night. Tell them what their peers are thinking about when they're in the same situation. And either you get them to agree that one of those 2 or 3 things is something they're facing as well, and then you can sort of provide advice and guidance on that. Or sometimes even better, they say, well, there's one of those things that I haven't been thinking about. But now that I know that all of my peers have been thinking about that, I certainly want to learn more. And so this is an opportunity for you as a sales rep to follow up on a lead, to follow up with value by providing additional value for the prospect and leaving that prospect with the impression that you know a lot about their problems. You know a lot about their situations. You have helped other companies work through that situation as well. So now I've got a sales rep who has a good reason to engage with a prospect. I've got a prospect that has some value out of that conversation and is willing to continue to talk about that. So that, you know, and so that approach, that follow-up, and the way that you execute it, the way that you record it, and then the next steps after that, this can all be systematized. This is merely a playbook and a checklist that you are following when something happens.
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's interesting what you mentioned because, as you said, I think it's a great opportunity for salespeople out there to position themselves also as thought leader or a bit as consultants. Because as you said, like, you know, they have an experience, like they have a real expertise of the market, and mentioning what other peers are doing can really like give ideas to potential prospects.
Right.
And then you lead with value, so it makes sense to conduct business. So yeah, I really like the inbound funnel and switching, because I just want to bounce back on what you said earlier. You know, like salespeople sometimes feel like they're alone, you know, driving revenue. In that case, I think it happens a lot for people like for outbound teams when they really have to go out there and search for like new customers on their own, whether it's like cold email, cold calling, or like LinkedIn messaging, etc. You've worked a lot like also with outbound teams. So how would you like build a B2B outbound strategy today, like when it comes to sales?
I mean, honestly, it's not that different than what we just talked about, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got someone responding to you that has already requested information, A, you know, you've got someone that is at least a little bit engaged with you, and B, you've got some clue as to what kind of conversation you should have with them based on what they requested or what they engaged with. Absent that information, the rest of this process still works, right? So people tell me all the time, well, cold calling is dead. Well, no, every conversation starts cold, right? Whether it's an email, I mean, but like what context, excuse me, can you call with? If you're reaching out to a prospect that you want to talk to, why is it worth their time? I know why it's worth your time. Like you want to talk to them and get them a demo, get them in your pipeline. I get that part. Right now, people are inundated with digital messages. We're getting more email pitches than ever. Now that we can't go out in the field, now that we can't go to trade shows, everyone's diverting those dollars to digital, you know, hiring more salespeople, making more phone calls. The interruptions are getting worse. How do you convert your outbound efforts from being interruptive to being irresistible? Like what insight, what message can you bring to the market right now that is actually useful? Let me give you an example directly from my business, right? So we're talking to a lot of marketing leaders in the last few weeks, last couple months, and we're getting a sense for how they're pivoting. We're getting a sense for how they're approaching pipeline development. We're getting a sense for how they're planning the second half of the year. And by having those conversations, we've identified 2 specific places where CMOs are having an immediate impact on increasing pipeline conversion right now. One of them is by unsticking frozen deals, like those short-term opportunities that froze up 2 months ago. They're focusing on and finding ways to get those deals moving again. And 2, they're figuring out how to go look at their broader prospect list and identify the companies in that prospect list that actually have a need that they need to solve right now. So those CMOs are figuring out how to get opportunities closed and how to find prospects that'll close more quickly. And so my offer out to other CMOs is like, let's grab a call and I'll share with you what those are, right?
Nice.
Yeah, we've done a lot of writing about them. We've done webinars about them. We're pretty much an open book on what those things are. And so my approach on that is like, we have learned from the market. We have talked to hundreds of CMOs. We've distilled what's working. I would like to share that with you. You don't have to buy it. Yeah. You don't have to fill out a form for it. Like, let's get on a call. I'll tell you what it is, right?
And now that you've teased us, can you let us know what it is then?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not like some secret sauce. I mean, the answer is just understanding the why for your prospects, right? Okay. There's a couple things. One, it's identifying a much shorter time to value window for your prospects. Like if 3 months ago someone was interested in an outcome they might achieve in a year, prospects aren't buying things that achieve outcomes in a year. They're buying things that achieve outcomes in the next 60, 90 days. Okay. So being able to articulate the impact you can have for a company in the shorter term window, that may not be your entire value proposition, but being able to identify that right away. Okay.
So kind of split your outcome into like smaller step and saying like, I can guarantee that in 2 months, we're going to reach that first milestone that will help us reach in a year this other milestone.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's having that shorter term mindset and then understanding amongst your opportunities as well as amongst your broader market and pipeline and even leads, which companies have the characteristic or attributes that can be observed that tell you that you can have that shorter time to value with them, right? So it's really, it's not nothing more complicated than just knowing in a more defined, detailed way, who are your best targets and why? Where are the buying signals? Where are the indicators internally that a company has a more acute need and an acute opportunity to benefit from whatever you're selling? And so it's knowing who to put, some level of compassionate urgency in front of.
Nice. We actually have a question from the audience. So several questions. But essentially, guys, like talking to the audience right now, for those who joined us recently, if you have questions during the show, make sure to post them in comment. Vuk is basically sending me over everything. So the first question, maybe you're not going to like it. I usually don't like this type of question, but I'm going to say, let's go for this one. Is, in your opinion, what are the hottest channels marketing needs to double down on today?
The hottest channel that you have at your that you should leverage, that is being under leveraged till today, is the telephone.
Nice.
People are afraid to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that connect rates have actually increased in the last 2 months. People are more willing to pick up the phone even if they don't know who it is. People are more willing to have their assumptions challenged right now. If you send an email, if you put up an ad, like you get someone respond, you got to try to get a hold of them again. You make a phone call and you get a connection. You have a live conversation right now, right? Yeah. And if you're going to call and waste someone's time by saying, "Hey, can I get you into a demo? And can I learn more about your expense management needs?" I mean, that. But if you can call the right people with the right message, just like I was talking about before, like if I called up a CMO and said, "Hey, listen, like I know you're busy, but my sense is like based on our conversations in the past of what I'm seeing, like you have these and these challenges. We have talked to dozens of your peers, and I'd love to share with you kind of what they're doing to solve for this." That's a conversation they might want to have, right? And you can script a voicemail that you could leave for those individuals with the follow-up email to try to get that live call as well.
Nice.
So, we can talk about digital channels as well, and there's plenty that are working. I mean, none of them are closed, but all of them are more crowded right now. The channel that isn't as crowded because not enough people are using it is the phone.
Nice. Yeah, I like it. There's a question from Vinay. So in B2B sales, what other mediums are suggested to deliver content and nurture leads? We use Marketo for automation. However, since we do not have enough leads at every stage of sales, we can't use ad platforms since most ad platforms have their audience restrictions.
Yeah. I mean, I think the basis behind this, I mean, you're listing off some tools which are important. And I could tell you that tools like, Path Factory and Uberflip and others, where you can allow your customers to sort of engage with content on their own terms and sort of binge on content, so to speak, is another place as well. But the basis and sort of commonality across all these channels is the content.
Yeah.
So you're not going to engage someone just because you have Marketo. You're not going to engage someone just because you have Path Factor. You're going to engage that prospect because you have something interesting to say, right? So the benefit of having good content, the benefit of having that interesting insight is that it can be repurposed across all of these channels. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about in this, I mean, like we're doing this live on Facebook. We're recording it so we can play it on demand.
Yeah.
Someone could be taking notes so that we could turn this into a blog post or sort of a highlights post. Someone could be recording this and then printing a transcript so people could just read the transcript later, right? So and then we've covered a lot of different topics, each of which could be sort of its own mini segment, or, you know, there's quotes behind some of this, or I mentioned earlier the sales pipeline sort of template to sort of measure and manage like what your pipeline. There's that output of it as well. So all of a sudden, this content has leverage across multiple channels, multiple sources, multiple sort of engagement paths within the sales pipeline.
So Matt, you just revealed our strategy to the world. Thank you for that.
All right. So I hope that sort of answers the question. That I think, you know, there are many platforms you can use to get a message out, but I think understanding the message and the content and really nailing, you know, how do you make your message irresistible to your prospect? How do you make it something that they really want to hear about and they want to hear more of moving forward? So the next time they see your brand, the next time they see your name, the next time they see content from you in whatever channel, they stop what they're doing and they read it. They stop what they're doing and they watch it. At minimum, they keep it. They don't delete it. They don't ignore it. You know, I mean, there's lots of content that I read right away. There's lots of content I save for later. There's things that are, you know, I don't throw away from my inbox. That's what you want to be. And that takes some time to build that type of credibility. But people are more receptive and more interested and more attracted to that value-added content right now more than ever. And I think that is going to be a sustained output from this temporary normal as we move into the rest of this year and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. What's actually your take on the crisis? Like, have you seen a few of the business you work with like highly impacted? Do you feel like people are getting back to, you know, like maybe how is it going in the US? Like, do you see like economy starting again, or what's your feel on it?
I mean, there's the macro and the micro answer to that, right? The macro, you know, broader answer is so you definitely see evidence of a rebound. We definitely see the market opening up again. We see lots of people starting to crawl back out of their houses and starting to try to find a new normal. So yes, that is happening, and I think it's happening more quickly with organizations that weren't as impacted by a lockdown, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're selling, you know, a software as a service, if you're selling a cloud computing deal, that didn't require going to a restaurant. It didn't require necessarily getting on an airplane. So some of those businesses, you know, saw a decrease in sales and revenue for a short period of time while everyone sort of recalibrated, but a lot of those pipelines are warming back up again. Mm-hmm. I have a client that sells, it's a B2B company. They sell group travel to alumni groups, like from universities, for example. They sell alumni food and wine trips to Europe, mostly to Italy from the US. Yeah. So that business has not come back yet, right? You know, and, you know, like you think about travel, you think about hospitality. I mean, just because you open a restaurant doesn't mean that everyone's going to want to come back right away. Doesn't mean that the business is going to like immediately come back. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of businesses that are going to take a while to recover. But I would say, you know, for us, you know, in the B2B space, a lot of our clients are in the tech space. The recovery has been a little more swift. You know, we have scars. We all have scars from what we went through the last couple months. But, you know, I think, I think that, you know, to get through this, we can't just wait for what our governments and scientists tell us to do. I mean, you know, and we also aren't going to do a lot by worrying about it. It's funny, I was just looking down because this came across this quote earlier today. It says, "Worrying doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength."
That's a good quote. I like it.
Yeah. So the idea that, you know, listen, I mean, I'm worried. I'm worried about what's going on. I'm worried for my kids. I'm worried for my business. I'm worried for a lot of reasons. But a better use of my energy is to say, what can I do right now?
Yeah.
Like, what can I do to help my family? What can I do to help my business? Like, what are the productive steps I could follow? Knowing that in addition to that, I have to put my own oxygen mask on first. I have to look after my own well-being in the process. And that's not just, Matt Heinz, business owner, entrepreneur. That's all of us, figuring out the people we can impact and the role that we have in the recovery directly.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a cool take. I actually want to bounce back again. Like when you mentioned early on, you were talking about reactivating deals that kind of froze from a couple like months ago or something, like prior to the crisis. And I want to move towards like CRMs, because I feel like CRMs are really like essential when you have a business, because it's where you keep all your data, all your key indicators. Yet I feel like they're very, very often underused. So what do you consider as the biggest mistake companies are doing, and also what should they focus on when it comes to KPIs within the CRM? And if you have a few examples, that would be amazing.
Well, I think that, CRM is a critical tool to be able to sort of measure and manage what's going on in the business. But I think it's a pretty poor sales rep tool. It's not a very good tool on its own in most cases to help sales reps do their job. So there are other systems on the market, such as SalesLoft and Outreach and VanillaSoft and others, that really help create more productivity for your sales team, give them an interface to be able to engage with it. I also think a lot of sales reps waste time in CRM.
Okay.
Most of what we are asking sales reps to do in CRM is not for their own benefit, it's for the company's benefit. And so if that equation exists in your organization, I bet your sales reps don't want to spend a lot of time in CRM, and your data is incomplete. And therefore, CRM is kind of this binary thing where you either have to not use it at all or use it entirely, right? And that doesn't mean use every feature. It just means if you're going to use it for your pipeline, if the pipeline is incomplete, then why bother? Right? But if you're going to require it, make sure that the sales team understands the impact it can have for them. Like, what's the benefit to them of doing what you say they can do in CRM? And two, make sure you're asking them to do as little as possible. Like, find other sources of information, find integrations, find some automated tools that can get into CRM what you need without the reps having to do it. And those tools like Outreach and SalesLoft and others are one way to do that. So I'm an active CRM user. I have my reports that as a business leader I use all day long. But with my business development hat on, I spend most of my time on the phone, in email, and in outreach. So as a rep, I don't go to Salesforce, but everything I do across those other channels automatically is updating and feeding and driving actions within CRM based on the integrations that we have set up. And so that takes time and effort to do that in an organization, but you create far greater efficiency and effectiveness from your sales organization when you do it.
Nice. And within the CRM, so what's for you like the main KPIs like people should look at and that are kind of undervalued?
I don't know that it's like when I think of KPIs in CRM, I think of just being able to see pipeline, being able to see where revenue is coming from, being able to see attribution of what's happening where. I want my other systems like Marketo and like Google and everyone else to feed data into CRM. So the place where I'm measuring, activities that I can buy a beer with is where I want to also find out like what led to that beer, what led to that outcome. So I want that sort of to be like what happened, why, and what's happening next, so to speak. But I don't want to measure necessarily like how much time people spend in CRM. I don't want to measure how many logins they have, because those are activity-based metrics that are really sort of last resort metrics. I don't care about them. Fundamentally, I care about the outcome.
Okay. And do you feel like so when it comes, like to more like sales management, because you have a team of business developers also for Heinz marketing, or?
No, it's just me.
It's you, you picking up the phone.
Well, yes and no. I don't have a sales team. Like I am the biz dev for our organization. I mean, we're a small team. We have it's word of mouth and referrals is where a lot of our business comes from. But you know, when it comes to working our target accounts, that's me on the phone, it's me in person, it's me on the events like this.
On live show on Facebook.
Yes.
Nice. And when it comes to organization, yeah, because I think you raised an interesting point. I see a lot of people, especially like VP sales, focusing on activities. So for example, they're like, okay, I want to check if that salesperson, how many times has he picked up the phone, how many like manual tasks has he done, etc. Like, what do you think about this metric? Like, would you be more focused on the outcome and on the beer money, or would you just look at the task and try to link it?
Well, look, I mean, behind every successful sales rep is a ton of work. It's a ton of calls. It's a ton of follow-ups. It's a ton of activity. So, you know, I'm not going to poo-poo the fact that like activities isn't important. Like you, as a sales rep, you have to grind every day, you know, to continue. But the grinding is not what you get paid for. It's the output of that. Yeah. So if you're making 100 calls a day, but calling the wrong people, that's a waste of time. You know, maybe you should make 20 calls to the right prospects that you have researched and identified, because you're going to get a better yield now and you're going to get a better yield later out of that investment. Right. And so activities are important, but I tend to have sort of a bottoms up approach to sales management. Let's look at what numbers you're hitting that matter most. And then let's peel back the onion to find out what other things you could be doing either differently or better or instead that can generate better outcomes. Like if you're hitting your number, great. If you're not hitting your number, let's look at your pipeline. Is your pipeline strong? Do you feel like your pipeline is strong enough that it's going to generate your short-term revenue? Great. Is your pipeline not strong enough? Uh-oh. Like, what are we going to do to build more pipeline? What do you have coming? What are you going to do to go get more business out of this? What are you going to go do to self-prospect to find your own leads that you're not getting from marketing? I mean, that's where you sort of peel back the onion. And you sort of need to look at that based on not only sort of the current selling period, but the next selling period. Because if all you're doing is working on closing deals for Q2 right now, if you're flushing out your pipeline and have nothing for Q3, you're going to have a bad third quarter. Yeah. So as a sales rep, you're always looking at like, what do I have in place that can close now? And what am I also doing to build opportunities and build the right volume of pipeline for the next upcoming selling periods as well? It's a lot of work. And that's why it takes a lot of activity to do it. And that's, you know, even good salespeople need good managers and good coaches that can keep them focused, can keep them aligned and disciplined around both of those activities, managing and closing your opportunities, as well as building your future pipeline.
Yeah, that's true. I've actually a question. It's a bit unrelated, but I'd love to get your take on it. I've seen recently like a few companies, especially with the crisis, were actually like hiring salespeople on a commission-only salary. So no like fixed salary, only commission. So I was very curious about that model. Like, have you experienced it? Have you seen it work? Have you seen it like, what are the pros and cons according to you? Like, do you like it or?
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I don't think so, but
you know, I think in tough economies, salespeople sometimes are willing to take those jobs because they believe in themselves and they believe they can do it. In better economies, as markets heat back up, it will only be the bad sellers that will take those jobs.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're a consistent performer, if you're a good salesperson, it's not a matter of hitting your number. It's not a matter of how you're getting paid. It's just a matter of sort of what you set up for yourself so that you're seeing a little more consistency of income. You know, put another way, like the best sales reps just won't take those jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
They'll take salary, sort of a base plus commission type job. The other challenge with commission only is you may set a quota for those sales reps.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but like, where's the stick? Like, what's their carrot or stick to hit? I mean, there's a carrot that says like, hey, you close as many as you want, you make as much money as you want. Yeah. But if you're saying commission only, it's a little easier for you as the manager, because you're like, listen, I don't pay until I get paid, right? Yeah. Great. You have a lot less control.
Yeah.
Over what your pipeline's going to look like. You have a lot less control of the consistency of whatever number you're trying to hit. I would rather give the better sales reps a little more security in at least a base they're going to make in exchange for having more control over the number they're going to hit.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah, definitely. There's a question from the audience, and we've been already live for almost 45 minutes. So how do you leverage your personal network to get more leads? Any approach on how to ask for an intro, and do you think it's effective?
Well, I think any goods, especially if you've been in or expect to continue in a particular industry, I mean, the more you can build your network and the more you can get to know other people in your industry, the better off you're going to be. I think establishing a reputation as someone who has value to share, who's going to help make people better, I think is important. I think one of the best things anybody can do on that front is, no matter what channel you're using, whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever, just get in the habit of sharing third-party ideas with your audience. Like, get in the habit of reading the trade magazines and reading blogs that your customers should be reading but never have time for, and retweet and curate some of the best from those channels. So be known as a source of someone. As people see that over time, they start to recognize that you have a pulse on what's working.
Yeah.
Right. What you share, what you retweet, and then what you write, what you say. I mean, maybe you're not a writer, start a podcast. Maybe you don't want to do that. Just like, record a video every once in a while on LinkedIn of something you're thinking about. It could be 20 seconds. It could be 45 seconds of just some quick thing that you thought about on your way home. Start keeping a paper trail of how you think and what you're thinking about. And if you don't want to do it directly, if you don't want to create content, just do the curation side, right? But have something interesting to say, have something interesting to share. And I think that content is how you can get those introductions. Like, no one's going to want to introduce you to so that someone in their network is about to get pitched with a demo.
Yeah.
If you say, hey, we just did some research around, what companies are doing to pivot their digital marketing spend in the second half of the year, I think your buddy could benefit from that, because I see them all over the web. I see their ads all over the web. Would you be willing to make an introduction simply so I can share that research with them directly so that can help their business?
Nice.
Now your friend looks good for making the because the introduction generated the insights that helps their second half year. So you have to make sure the content is not a thinly veiled sales pitch. It has to actually be valuable. But I think those introductions, the bigger you build your network, the more of those introduction opportunities you're going to have.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure you not only understand what's in it for the end recipient, but what's in it for the intermediary. Make sure the referrer, the person in the middle, looks good in the process.
And would you also just, it's more on a practical level, but whenever you ask for an intro, would you also write the intro yourself and say, like, here's the type of message you could write? Or would you just, Oh,
100%. I mean, do the work for whoever you're asking for the introduction. Their work, the work they do should be solely focused on the introduction, like the
copy pasting.
Instant act of, like, I'm going to allow you to leverage someone that I know. So it's your responsibility to come up with the value, to come up with the content, and even to say, hey, listen, here's a couple lines you can use to write this. Or say, like, I'm going to send you a separate email, and all you have to do is forward it and say, hey, John, thought you might be interested in this, Matt will follow up, right? So make it as easy as possible for the intermediary to say yes.
And I like it, because often I got asked to make intros, and then, like, eventually I'm going to say yes, but then, it's like, okay, I have to write it myself. I have to do all the work. I'm like, come on.
Well, and further to that point, and I think this is what potentially someone was asking about there, is if I were to say, hey, I'm a good marketing consultant. If you hear of anybody that needs marketing, will you let me know? Like, that is such a bad referral request, because now I'm putting all the work on you.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm asking you to remember me. I'm asking you to remember what I do. I'm asking you to figure out, of all the people you're talking to, who you should refer to me. Versus if I were to say, hey, I noticed you're connected with John. How well do you know John? I have something I think can benefit John. Would you be willing to introduce me to John? Here's a couple lines you can use, right? Don't ask for general referrals. Ask for specific requests. Make it easy for people to say yes to something specific.
Nice. I love it. Matt, thanks a lot for being with us today. It was really, really valuable. I think the audience was super happy with all the tips you shared. So I'm gonna ask it again because it's like the end of the show. So is there any place where people can reach out to you, like the best places?
Yeah, I think appreciate that. Appreciate everyone joining today and watching and listening. HeinzMarketing.com, just HEINZ marketing.com. We've got 12 plus years of content up there for free, blog posts, research, best practice guide, digital copies of my books, all for free. So help yourself. You know, I mentioned earlier sort of curating third-party information, lots of sales and marketing best practices we're putting up on Twitter at Heinz Marketing. And just, if you want to email me, I'm just Matt, M-A-T-T at HeinzMarketing.com. Would love to hear from anyone.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Matt. And yeah, you should definitely go check the Twitter because lots of good content out there. Thank you guys and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.